Hello guys, welcome to our second to last PowerPoint check where we are going to discuss how Africa gained its freedom after World War II, or the majority of Africa. About 90% of Africa was taken over by the Europeans. There was 10% of the continent that was not taken over. Um, Please remember, as always, to highlight your answers in your PowerPoint check. I really want to focus on that. This semester, guys. So continue to highlight your answers in your PowerPoint checks. Your EQ is to the left of me, and let's learn a little bit about Africa gaining its freedom. So this is a map of Africa. Africa is a continent that has a ton of different countries on there. I do not know the exact number, but most of the continent, other than Ethiopia and I believe um, one of the other countries on there, Ethiopia and Liberia, I believe, were the only countries in Africa that were not taken over by European nations. So we're going to learn about how they changed after Europe left them. Today we are not going to go over every country in on the map, but we are going to go over two of the most representative, two that explain goods and bad things about um, Africa. So today we are going to go over Ghana and the Congo. We're going to talk about um, what how sorry. We're going to talk about how freedom brought them challenges that they've never had before. So, like India, many countries in Africa actually fought in World War II. Parts of World War II were fought in northern Africa, and many of the colonies sent troops to help their parent country um, fight the war. Also, in order to fight the war, many of the natural goods that Africa had, like oil and gold and metal and diamonds, were exported or taken out of uh, the continent and given to the Europeans to help fund the war. And so, because of this, the African people demanded their own freedom. They said, hey, you have used us for so long that we deserve our freedom. And so, there were a lot of movement in Africa for the colonies to gain their own freedom. Many of them were able to do so, but then a lot more had to actually fight wars against their European leaders to demand their freedom, and this all popped up out of a thing called the Negritude movement. Basically, what the Negritude movement was it said, hey, we as Africans do not have to submit to the culture of Europe because we have our own culture and it's beautiful and we deserve the honor and respect of having our own place to live. That because we are different people and we have a different culture, um, you should respect us and allow us to rule ourselves. And so from that came a bunch of revolutions that demanded the freedom of all Africans. So first we're going to look at Ghana as an example um, of a colony that's demanded its freedom. So Ghana was called the British Gold Coast. It was ran by England, and as the name dictates, it had a ton of gold in it. So England made tons of money off of exploiting the African people, making them work in the gold mines, and then taking their gold. And so in the 1950s, Africans began to demand their freedom, and they had protests that led to them gaining their own country. They were led by a guy named Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah was a protester who demanded African freedom. He said that as a people, we deserve our own freedom. He actually visited the White House to explain why he thought Ghana, or at the time British Gold Coast, should have their own country and be able to run it um, on their own. So in 1957, the British actually submitted to what their colony asked for. They gave them freedom, and British Gold Coast changed their name to Ghana, where Nkrumah would be a lifelong president. He was elected twice, but most times he did not allow elections. He, This is going to be an example of a lot of other countries in um, Africa. What happens is they say they want freedom and that they want elections and that they want a fair government, but then when they get their freedom, they're usually taken over by a dictator because many of the people do not know how to run a country. They've never lived in freedom, and so when they have been given their own colony, they submit to usually a strong dictator who does many awful things to their people. So to give an example of an even stronger, more evil and bitter um, dictator, we are going to look at Congo as our example of a country that turned extremely bad after their freedom. So Congo was controlled by Belgium, and Belgium had done awful things to the Congo. They had killed many. They basically enslaved every African American, not African American, every African who lived in the Congo was basically a slave to Belgium, and there was tons of wealth on the Congo River, which had been taken by the Belgian government for years, like gold and diamonds. These are still actually in the King of Belgium's uh, secret like bank. He has this gold that was taken from this colony, and basically he killed millions of people in the name of making gold. So that being said, in the 1960s, when the Congo began to demand their freedom, um, basically Belgium said, "Well, we took all your money, so we might as well give you back your country." And the Congo was in disaster because everybody there had basically been a slave for hundreds of years, and so they knew nothing other than slavery. And so when you grant them freedom, what happens is a bunch of warlords fight over power, and pretty soon this giant war that happened after Belgium left led to a dictator named Mobutu Sese Seko taking power. He's the man in the beautiful leopard print above me. He was a leader in the army, and so when he was able to fight the country and control it, he actually became a dictator, an evil dictator. For 32 years, he named the country Zaire into the Congo, and he did evil things like rape and stealing money and corruption and bribery, and he was a very mean man who did many horrible things to the Congo, a lot like Belgium did to them. He was able to sort of take power and do the same thing. In 1997, the people of the Congo protested Zaire and Mobutu Sese Seko's evil dictatorship, and they were able to become a republic, which means they had a bunch of states that all voted on an election like what we do. The United States is a republic, so they tried to do something like the United States. So in 1999, which was really recently, they became a republic, and they finally had peace after being controlled by a dictator after Belgium doing evil things. They were able to finally maintain peace in 2002, which is just like 20 years ago, which is insane that this country has only had peace and freedom for 20 years. So colonies in Africa usually have been taken over by dictators who do much corrupt things. You guys will research that this week and see that many countries in Africa have extreme corruption and poverty. And sadly, that's been the story of Africa for the last 30 years, is that the colonists leave and that the people are left to be controlled by usually a dictator who does not take care of them until they live in poverty and hunger. So that's our notes for the week, only about 10 minutes long. You're so welcome for that. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a remind or to email me. I appreciate you guys. I will see you pretty soon. My court case should be ending in about 3 weeks, I hope. So I hope to see you guys soon. If you have any questions, feel free to always contact me. Thank you and have a good week.